Ethan moved quickly, his breath steady despite the chaos erupting around him. Plasma bolts scorched the air, explosions rocking the ground beneath his feet. Alien machinery whirred and clanged, their shrill sounds mixing with human shouts of command. His focus stayed sharp. This was just another mission. But something was different. This time, the stakes were higher, the enemy more desperate. Ahead, he spotted Zyra, the alien princess. She was pinned down, her defenses faltering against the relentless assault. Without hesitation, Ethan sprinted through the barrage of fire, dodging lasers with trained precision. His heart pounded in his chest as he slid beside her, shielding her from the advancing enemy. He quickly returned fire, precision shots taking out the hostiles closing in on her position. "Get down," he barked, pulling her behind the cover of a smoldering piece of debris. Zyra's breath was ragged, her usually composed demeanor cracked by the intensity of the moment. "You saved me," she managed, her voice laced with both gratitude and disbelief. "I wasn't going to leave you out there," Ethan replied, eyes scanning the battlefield for the next threat. His tone was gruff, professional, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. They'd fought side by side before, but this, saving her life, was something different. Zyra took a moment to compose herself, her violet eyes sharp once more. "We have to retreat. My people. We're losing. We're on the verge of collapse." Ethan frowned. "I know the situation's bad, but we have to hold the line. There's no other option." "There is another option," she said quietly, her voice tinged with a desperation Ethan hadn't heard before. They managed to secure a temporary safe zone, shielded from the battle by a crumbling building. Ethan reloaded his rifle, checking his ammo count, while Zyra paced, her brow furrowed in thought. He glanced at her, noticing the tension in her every movement. "You're thinking something dangerous," he said. "It's not dangerous," Zyra replied, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "It's the only way to save my people, to stop this war." Ethan raised an eyebrow, unsure where this was going. "What do you mean?" Zyra stopped pacing and turned to face him fully. "Marry me." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He blinked, certain he'd misheard her over the ringing in his ears from the battle. "What?" "You saved me. You saved more than just my life today," she continued, her voice picking up speed as if she were racing against time. "Your actions. You've proven humanity's strength, your honor. If we marry, it won't just be a union of two people. It'll be a symbol, an alliance between our species. It could bring peace." Ethan stared at her, his mind spinning. You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious." Zyra's expression was intense, almost pleading. "My people are on the brink of extinction, Ethan. This war is bleeding us dry, and I can't stop it alone. Marrying you would unite our worlds. The humans would be bound to protect us, and we could end this cycle of destruction." Ethan shook his head, stepping back slightly. "I'm a soldier, Zyra. I'm not some diplomat or royal figure. I fight wars. I don't negotiate peace treaties. You're asking for something I'm not equipped to handle." "You're more than just a soldier," Zyra insisted. "You've shown that today. You've saved countless lives, including mine. You care about more than just following orders, and that's exactly why I'm asking you." Ethan felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. He wanted to deny it, to claim that this was all too much. He wasn't cut out for the political games and responsibilities of royalty. He'd signed up to fight, not to lead nations or negotiate galactic peace. But the desperation in her voice gnawed at him. She wasn't just asking as a princess trying to save her people. She was asking as someone who saw no other way out. I don't know if I can do this," he said finally, his voice low. "I don't even know if it would work." "It will," Zyra said, stepping closer. "Our people respect strength, and you've shown them that humans are strong. If we marry, it will send a message. It will show both our civilizations that unity is possible, that we can fight together for something greater than just survival." Ethan's mind raced, torn between his sense of duty and the enormity of what she was asking. He respected Zyra. He admired her strength, her intelligence, her determination. But marriage? He barely knew her beyond the battlefield, and now she wanted to bind their futures together? "Zyra, this isn't just about politics," he said, searching for the right words. "Marriage is." "I know," she interrupted, her voice softer now. "I know it's more than that. But right now, I don't have the luxury of time to think about anything else. If we don't do this, My people will fall. And I can't let that happen. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his dirt-streaked hair. He'd fought countless battles, made life-or-death decisions in the heat of combat, but nothing had ever felt this complicated. The weight of what she was asking sat heavy in his chest. "I'm not saying no," he said after a long pause. "But this isn't something I can agree to without thinking it through." Zyra nodded, though the urgency remained in her eyes. "I understand, but think quickly, Ethan. Time is not on our side." He nodded, unable to shake the feeling that whatever decision he made, it would change the course of his life and the lives of millions, forever. Ethan sat in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The war was far larger than he had imagined. Zyra's people, despite their advanced technology and centuries of combat experience, were fighting a losing battle. Multiple alien factions had surrounded her civilization, tearing them apart from all sides. Even with the recent alliance with Ans, the tide was still not turning in their favor. He had always seen the war as something tactical, just missions, battles, survival. But now, after Zyra's proposal, it had become personal, tangled in politics and diplomacy. The fragile alliance between humans and Zyra's people could crumble if he made the wrong move. He'd never signed up for any of this. He was a soldier, not a diplomat, and yet somehow the survival of entire civilizations seemed to rest on his shoulders. A senior advisor to Zyra explained more about the royal family's situation. They had been under pressure for years, Zyra in particular. With no clear solution to stop the war, her family saw her as the key to ending the conflict. Marriage to a human soldier, a hero to her people, could unify their races and symbolize hope. It wasn't just about military strength, it was about showing that different species could come together for peace. But not everyone saw it that way. Behind the scenes, some factions in her empire deeply opposed the idea of uniting with humans. They viewed Earth as primitive, unworthy of sharing power in the galaxy. There were whispers of discontent. Some of Zyra's own advisors didn't trust the humans. More troubling were the rumors of assassination attempts on the princess. Ethan learned that by marrying her, he would be marked as a target too. His life would be in danger. Not just from the enemies in battle, but from hidden forces in Zyra's own court. Ethan's head spun with the complexity of it all. He had thought the war was brutal, but now he was caught in a web of politics where trust was fragile, and betrayal lurked in every shadow. He couldn't help but feel out of place, a soldier trying to navigate a world of rulers and diplomats. He confided in one of his fellow human officers, seeking advice. The officer didn't sugarcoat it. "This is bigger than us, Ethan," he said, leaning forward with a serious look. "If you marry Zyra, it could be the best strategic move humanity's ever made. Think about it. We secure a powerful ally with resources, advanced technology, things that could turn the tide of the war for good. This marriage? It's more than just a symbol. It's an opportunity." Ethan wasn't sure. But what about the risks? "I'm not exactly cut out for politics. What if this whole thing backfires?" "Every decision has risks," the officer replied. "But that's leadership. You don't think those in power are all comfortable? They deal with this pressure every day. The question is, are you willing to take the chance for something bigger than yourself?" That question gnawed at Ethan. He wasn't a stranger to danger or sacrifice, but this felt different. He hadn't signed up to lead or to be a symbol. He had always been a man of action, relying on his instincts to make decisions in the heat of battle. But this was another battlefield entirely, a political one where every word, every gesture could ripple through entire civilizations. As the days went on, he couldn't shake the image of Zyra, standing alone with the weight of her people's future pressing down on her. Her calm, strategic mind had always impressed him, but now he saw something else: her isolation. The war had drained her people, and they looked to her for a miracle. Ethan began to realize that while he could leave and return to his life as a soldier, Zyra didn't have that option. She was born into this, and she couldn't escape the crushing responsibility. He found himself replaying their conversation about the marriage proposal. She wasn't just asking him to marry her, she was asking him to stand by her when no one else would. To share the burden that her family, her people, had placed on her shoulders. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about trust. But still, doubt gnawed at him. Would he be able to carry that weight? Could he navigate the dangerous political waters of an alien empire, where assassination plots and power struggles simmered just beneath the surface? Could he truly stand by Zyra in the way she needed him to? He tried to imagine the future, the potential of a united front, human and alien forces standing together, stronger than ever before. It could be the turning point in the war, the moment that tipped the scales. Or it could be a disaster, with Ethan caught in the crossfire between factions that didn't want to see peace. The more he thought about it, the more he realized there was no easy answer. It wasn't a question of whether or not he wanted to marry Zyra. It was about whether he was willing to sacrifice the life he knew, to take on a responsibility far beyond anything he had imagined. Could he trust himself to make the right choices, not just for his people, but for hers? One thing became clear to him. This wasn't just about him anymore. The decision he made would shape the fate of two civilizations, two entire worlds, and that realization was terrifying. But deep down, Ethan knew that the war wouldn't be won by soldiers alone. It would take more than battles to save the galaxy. It would take alliances, trust, and sacrifices far greater than any he had faced on the battlefield. The palace was eerily quiet. Ethan stood on the balcony, with the distant stars twinkling against the backdrop of a war-torn galaxy. He had been keeping to himself, lost in thought, when the stillness was shattered by the sudden, sharp sound of explosions. His soldier instincts kicked in immediately. He turned to see flashes of light illuminating the hallways of the royal palace, followed by the unmistakable sounds of plasma fire and alien weaponry. He didn't need to think. Grabbing his sidearm, he raced toward the commotion, his boots pounding against the marble floors. Shouts of panic and the clang of weapons echoed through the corridors as guards rushed to protect the royal family. Ethan's mind zeroed in on one thing: Zyra. His pulse quickened as he fought his way through the confusion, his weapon raised, eyes scanning foe. Threats. The palace had been breached. Rounding a corner, he spotted Zyra, her violet eyes wide with alarm as several attackers advanced on her. Her guards were holding them off but struggling. Without hesitation, Ethan fired, his shots precise, taking down two of the attackers before they could get any closer. He moved swiftly, joining the fray alongside her guards, his military training taking over. The attackers were relentless, but so was Ethan. He fought with a cold, calculated precision, dodging plasma bolts and striking down enemies with methodical efficiency. Alien weapons fired, the air buzzing with the hum of energy blasts, but Ethan pressed on, determined to reach Zyra. The battle was over in minutes, the attackers either dead or captured, but the chaos lingered in the air. As the dust settled, Ethan's gaze finally landed on Zyra. She stood tall, but he could see the tension in her posture. The guards were securing the area, but the danger had passed. For now. He approached her cautiously, his breath still steady from the adrenaline coursing through him. "You all right?" he asked, his voice rough but concerned. Zyra nodded, but the look in her eyes betrayed her. She was shaken, though she did her best to hide it behind her royal composure. "I'm fine. This isn't the first time someone's tried to kill me." Her attempt to sound indifferent fell flat. She turned away slightly, looking out over the ruined courtyard where the ambush had taken place. Ethan could see past her facade. She was strong, no doubt, but even the strongest could crack under the relentless pressure. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It shouldn't be something you have to get used to." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The palace, though now secure, felt more vulnerable than ever. Ethan could sense the tension hanging between them, not from the battle, but from something deeper. Zyra's control seemed to slip as she finally exhaled, a breath she had been holding for too long. "They'll keep coming," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "As long as I'm a symbol of hope, as long as I'm a threat to the factions who want this war to continue, they'll never stop." She looked at him, the steel in her eyes softening for the first time. "I don't think I can protect my people if I can't even protect myself." Ethan had seen many things in his time as a soldier, but watching Zyra, a woman who had always carried herself with unshakable resolve, reveal the cracks in her armor stirred something in him. He wasn't just looking at a princess anymore. He was seeing the person behind the crown. The weight of her duty, the fear of failure, the constant threat of death. It was all there, laid bare in that moment of vulnerability. "You're not alone in this," he said softly. It was a simple statement, but it carried more weight than either of them had expected. Zaira looked at him, her eyes searching his face. For once, she didn't try to mask her fear. "I've been alone my whole life," she admitted, her voice laced with exhaustion. "Even my family, they see me as a means to an end, a tool for peace. I can't fail them, but I can't keep pretending I'm not terrified." Ethan felt something shift inside him. All his doubts about the marriage, the politics, the danger, suddenly they didn't seem as insurmountable. He saw how much Zaira carried on her own, the enormous responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders from birth. She wasn't just fighting for her people's survival. She was fighting for her own identity in the middle of a galaxy that wanted to tear her apart. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. Then, slowly, Zaira's walls came down. She didn't say anything more, but the look she gave him spoke volumes. She wasn't the untouchable royal figure anymore. In this moment, she was just a person, a woman fighting for a future she wasn't sure she could deliver. And Ethan, he wasn't just a soldier anymore. He wasn't just someone caught in the crossfire of an intergalactic war. He was standing at a crossroads, realizing that maybe, just maybe, this marriage could be more than just a political move. It could be a real chance to make a difference, not just for humanity or Zaira's people, but for both of them. For the first time since Zaira had made her desperate plea, Ethan began to see the marriage in a new light. Yes, it was about politics and strategy, but now it was about something more. He could sense his own emotions shifting, his respect for Zaira deepening into something more personal, more profound. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the seed of something that could grow into it. "I don't know if I'm the right person for all this," Ethan said after a long pause. "But I do know one thing. You don't have to carry this burden alone." Zaira's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement that in this moment, she wasn't as alone as she had felt for so long. The palace was still, the chaos of the assassination attempt now fading into memory. But between Ethan and Zaira, something had changed. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was the bond that was slowly forming between them. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel like he was standing on the outside of a political game he didn't want to play. He was starting to see himself as part of something bigger, something that might just be worth fighting for, beyond the battlefield. The palace buzzed with activity. Drones floated through the halls, carrying decorations and ceremonial artifacts. The air hummed with the energy of technology, and the alien chants of Zaira's people echoed throughout the chambers. This was not just a wedding, it was the beginning of something far larger than either Ethan or Zaira had anticipated. Ethan stood still, his military posture rigid, trying to focus amid the chaos. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a statement, a symbol of unity between two civilizations that had been locked in a bitter struggle for far too long. Today he wasn't just Ethan, the soldier. He was becoming a figurehead for a fragile peace. His thoughts raced, reflecting on how much had changed since that fateful day when he'd pulled Zaira from danger. Now, he was stepping into a new life. The room where he prepared felt foreign, the sleek alien architecture unfamiliar to him, but the importance of the ceremony was not lost on him. His uniform, tailored for the occasion, represented the best of humanity, a stark contrast to Zaira's alien garb, intricate and regal, flowing with symbols of her royal lineage. It was a merging of two worlds in every possible sense. Before the ceremony began, Zaira approached him in private, her royal garments trailing behind her. She paused for a moment, her violet eyes searching his face. "I never thought it would come to this," she said quietly, her voice soft but steady. "I owe you more than I can ever repay, Ethan. Not just for saving my life, but for standing with me when you had every reason to walk away." Ethan met her gaze, the gravity of her words sinking in. He didn't respond with a speech. He had never been one for grand gestures, but in his eyes Zaira could see his resolve. He had made his decision. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She smiled faintly, a rare moment of vulnerability passing between them. The ceremony itself was unlike anything Ethan had experienced. The vast hall was filled with alien dignitaries, their robes shimmering in strange hues as the light from the hovering drones reflected off them. Human officers stood alongside them, a visual testament to the alliance being forged. The rituals blended both cultures, an odd mix of human tradition and alien symbolism, a reminder that, while this marriage was a union, it was also an experiment, one that would shape the future of the galaxy. As the rites were performed, Ethan felt the eyes of every being in the room on him. There was a tension in the air that went beyond the grandeur of the ceremony. It was the tension of uncertainty, of not knowing if this marriage could truly bring peace or if it would only deepen the divide. Still, he remained steady. The vows were spoken in both human and alien languages, echoing across the chamber. And as the final declaration was made, Ethan felt a shift, a sense that they had just crossed an invisible line, stepping into a new reality. But the sense of relief was short-lived. As soon as the ceremony concluded, the political fallout began. A group of alien leaders, powerful and influential, approached with veiled hostility. They refused to acknowledge the marriage, their disdain for humanity thinly disguised. They questioned the wisdom of aligning with a species so new to the galactic stage. The whispers of rebellion were clear. This union would not be accepted by all. Ethan stood beside Zyra as the leaders confronted them, the tension palpable. For a brief moment, he wondered if this marriage would unravel before it even began. But then, something inside him shifted. This was no longer just Zyra's battle. It was his too. Drawing in a breath, Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "This marriage isn't just a formality," he said, addressing the dissenters directly. "It's a commitment to a future where our people fight together, not against each other. You might not like it, but the alternative is endless war. And none of us can survive that." His words, though simple, carried the weight of truth. The room fell silent, the dissenters eyeing him warily. Ethan wasn't a politician, but his bravery, his willingness to speak up in defense of their alliance, cut through the tension. It was a pivotal moment, one that signaled his shift from soldier to leader, from protector to partner. Zyra stood by his side, her eyes glinting with approval. The ceremony ended with a fragile sense of hope. The war was far from over, and there were still factions that sought to undermine the peace they were trying to build. But this marriage, this alliance, was a first step toward something greater. Later, when the ceremony had quieted and the guests had dispersed, Ethan and Zyra found a moment of peace together. They stood at the edge of the palace, overlooking the vast city below, illuminated by the distant glow of stars. The uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on them both, but for the first time there was a sense of shared purpose. "We've made it through today," Zyra said softly, "but the real fight is just beginning." Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I know, but we've got a chance now. A real one. I won't pretend to know what comes next, but I do know that whatever it is, we'll face it together." Zyra smiled, a flicker of hope crossing her face. Together, then. In that quiet moment, with the war still raging and their future uncertain, they found solace in each other's company. The political landscape was treacherous, and the path to peace was fraught with danger, but they had made the first step. Ethan reflected on what it all meant, not just for him and Zyra, but for humanity. Time and again, humans had proven their resilience, their capacity to stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. This marriage was a symbol of that strength, of their ability to build alliances and inspire hope even in the darkest times. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Ethan and Zyra were in this together, bound not just by a marriage of necessity, but by a shared belief that peace, however fragile, was worth fighting for.